job interview is one of the most anxiety-provoking situations most people can find themselves in, even when they go to plan. But what happens when you have your worst interview ever? Our guests share their worst interviews ever in the hope that you will take something from their mistakes to have a more successful interview outcome. Some of the stories are horrific and some are just downright embarrassing. Let's join our host, Kevin O'Reilly, the interview skills coach with over 25 years experience in the fields of coaching and recruitment. Let's welcome our guests to the show.
Welcome to another episode of My Worst Job Interview Ever. With me, your host, Kevin O'Reilly, the interview skills coach. Today we have Ross Moffett, a sales director from Northern Ireland's largest entertainment venues such as the ICC Belfast, Waterfront Hall and the Ulster Hall. Ross, you're very, very welcome on the show today, and I'm sure our listeners will be keen to hear all about your experiences and how you got to where you are today. But before we get there, I would love for you to tell us and the listeners something that not many people know about you.
Something that not many people know about me. I am a big advocate of homeless outreach in the city of Belfast. I would be out actively working with the homeless communities and working with the charities and trying to develop ways and means out of that situation. You know, as a good friend of mine once said, it's a man-made problem, so there's a man-made solution. So I'm still trying to actively look for that solution.
Oh, that's brilliant. And I know of you, and I know some of your background, and I know that you do lots of work for the homeless. But I'm sure some of our listeners don't actually know that you did a lot of work as well in music.
Yeah, so a while back, I used to have my own music promotion, and we ran shows from Belfast and then up in the northwest in Derry, Londonderry, and then down in Dublin. But for me, it was important to not only just run shows and not just be another promotion, but it was to show musicians what the industry was like in totality. So what I would do on occasions, I would hire places like the Mac, and I would bring in music labels, radio, marketing agencies, videographers, and the like, and run workshops for the musicians, so that it wasn't just a case of, yep, I can pick up a guitar and yep, I can sing, but it's how you move through the industry and show them the circles to work within, and then give them the real life experience by going on the road and going in circulation throughout those cities to gig and promote themselves. And then again, we would help with the promotion, and it was a lot of fun. I really, really loved it. Well, I think that's in a weird way how I've ended up here without jumping ahead of this a little bit. I think that part of my life has brought me to the dance here. Pardon the pun.
Yeah, and I think if we actually look at that as a total picture, a lot of what happens in our past has given us that direction to where we are right now. And it's almost like you knew what I was going to ask you here, Ross, but let's take a little step backwards and where this journey began,
Yeah.
and take us up to where you sort of are now. Before we get into that lovely question of your worst job interview ever.
Oh yeah, there's a few. I mean, look, my career has been varied, but it's not what happens. And for me, it's never been about what's been happening in my 9 to 5. I've been very, very fortunate in my life that I've never. Every move that I've made has been a progression. So that if that's and I don't mean by job title, I mean by personal development. I've learned from the people that I've been with. I've taken what I can from the industry that I've been a part of, and I've given back more than I've left it better than I found it, hopefully, and then I've moved on. So I've never left anywhere by burning bridges. I've always left places very amicably. I've always looked favorably upon everywhere that I've been, but it has been varied and it's been mishmashed with outside interests. So to give you a quick sweep, you know, I started off my career, if you want to call it that, way back when you and I first met, when I was a student and we worked in sports stores.
Oh, Ross, don't be telling them how long ago it was.
I'm
only 21.
I know, me too, with a few years' experience. The grey hairs might give that away. However, that's when I found a passion for selling and a passion for people. At that time, it was a golden era. I met my wife in that store. I met my best man, my best mate. We all have my wife's bride, maid of honor, and you know we've all remained friends at the core. throughout that. But more importantly, when we worked together as that unit, we were unstoppable. We were best in class. We had a laugh, but we got the job done, and that was my first insight into culture. I took that with me, and I moved through a brief period. I was in banking, uh, talking about job interviews. I went for a job interview, didn't get the job because I was young and hungry. Threw the toys out of the pram instantly and changed industry and landed in the motor industry. And I found myself in the motor industry for a good 15 years. And I worked through Mercedes Benz. I excelled at what I was doing there. I progressed on to another leasing company called Fleet Financial, where I moved into the management position. Had the time of my life there, but found more good people. I found a mentor there. Still, he hates when I say this because he's only a couple of years older than me. And, when you think of a mentor, you normally think of somebody who's, well beyond the years of your own. But if my house burnt down tomorrow at 3 o'clock in the morning, he'd probably still one of the first people I'd ring and say, what do I do here? So it's a guy called Damien Campbell, who is the sales director of Fleet Financial now. Brilliant guy. Learned a lot from him. Learned a lot about how to manage my own emotions, how to take emotions out of the fact and deal with the fact and the tasks at hand, and how to manage people. And some of those lessons were invaluable. But as I said, Damien was only a few years older than I. He was in the position that I wanted to aspire to be. We sort of came at a bit of a Mexican standoff. He wasn't going to go anywhere. I couldn't go anywhere within the organization. Another opportunity presented itself within renewable energy, which is again another handbrake turn. And I ended up in a new industry again. And I was with a company called Everon for 3 years, and we were very, very successful at what we were doing there. And we built the brand, we built the product offering, and we built out geographically. And then this opportunity here landed, and I seen the opportunity for my dream job. So whilst I was going back doing all of those things that I've just mentioned, you've hit the nail on the head as well. I was doing the music thing in between all of that. That was my passion project. I was then doing the homeless outreach, so I was working within my own community. I was working within my own city, and this opportunity for the role that I sit in now gave me license to work within live entertainment, business, tourism, have real economic impact within the city, offer opportunities for job and work for those who have previously went without it. And it just ticked all my boxes. I had to go for it. I just had something spoke to me and said, and I loved where I was with everyone. We were doing really, really well. They're still doing really, really well. They're continuing to grow. I'll always look back favorably on it. I could have sat there for the rest of my life happily, but something just said, you have to give this a go. So here I am at the ICC, the International Convention Centre of Belfast, and the Waterfront Hall, which is my favourite listening room in all of the globe, and the Ulster Hall, which is synonymous, with live entertainment and music.
Yeah, it just sounds like you've got something inside you that just wants to keep going.
And funny, when you talk about interviews, and this is something I've always found hard to articulate. People will say, "Well, what's your driver for success?" And you go through the usual things. If the tick box ones that I say, I've got my family that I want to support. That's a given. But you're right. There's just something that lives in me that has to continue to be better than I was yesterday. I want to continue to progress, and not just me personally. I get real joy in seeing people around me progress. If I can bring people with me in the journey, and that's something that I learned from Damien in Fleet Financial. You can't be an island to be successful. You just can't. You have to work with people. But I always relate the way back when, in our day, the culture. If I could have taken that core people that I mentioned from the sports store and put them into each of my industries now, would still be unbeatable. But they're scattered across the globe now, so it's hard to do that. But because of the culture and the belief in each other, and so within teams, there's going to be drivers and there's going to be people who are happy to be passengers to a degree, and they'll all bring their own bit. I'm always the driver. It's just in me.
Has it always been just in you, though? Is there a moment in your life where you have thought, you know what? I'm going to be the driver. I'm fed up. I'm sick. I'm not going to be the driver or the passenger anymore. I'm going to be the driver.
Yeah, So when I first broke into the motor industry, it was ruthless. It was low base salary, high commission, and everything you earned. Every pound was a prisoner, and it was a slog. It was 60, 70 hours a week. It was proper work. It was stressful. There was the peaks and the troughs and the time away from family. And, I've been very fortunate. I've been with my wife longer than I've been without her. That's a really weird statistic. I've been with her since I was 16. So I was missing out on time with her. And at that time we were wanting to start a family. And she said, well, look, if you think we're going to start a family and I'm going to do it on my own, you have another thing coming. And that was the mind shift change, was like, well, how do I be better, work smarter, work as hard, and the realization was, you're going to have to take control of your own destiny here. Yeah. You're going to have to be in control. And again, when I went to Fleet Financial, they offered me my own playground, as Damien would call it. They allowed me to build a business within a business. They gave me all the support and the infrastructure, but allowed me to be my own boss. And they treated me like an adult. And I've said it to my own team here, and he always said it to me, we employ adults for a reason. And I had to be the best adult in the room. That was it. And and from that point, I've always continued to take it on and try and grow. And again, at that time, I was opening up my network. With the Mercedes-Benz, you're in the showroom, high-end luxury product, people were coming to me though. When Fleet Financial, they opened the doors and said, there you go, there's the big wide world, you go fill your boots. So I had to figure out how I was going to do this, and it was about embracing my network, growing that, creating relationships, and really starting to build upon those. And I understood how difficult that is to do from a standing start. So if I have the opportunity to open doors for maybe junior members of my team who are at that point in their career where they're just having those doors open for the first time and saying, there's the big wide world, and I can take some of the heartache and hassle out of it and introduce them to the right players and allow them to create their own network, then why wouldn't I do that? Because if they're better, I'm better, and we all win.
Absolutely. So I'm a great believer in that as well. I mean, it takes many people to make one person look as good and competent as they are.
Absolutely.
And I always love to see that little picture, of all these people lifting this one person up, and then that person reaching down and helping everybody else up.
Another thing people won't know about me, because you look at the blazer and the shirt and stuff, I do carry some tattoos across my arm, but the one that's on my right wrist is the most important one for me. It's a symbol of an organization that I used to work with, again, outside in, which I'll come to in a minute. And it says all equal. We are all equal. And it's on my right hand for a reason, because that's the hand you shake hands with.
Yeah.
When I reach out if I'm reaching across a board table or to somebody on the street, we're all equal. We're just in different positions,
Absolutely.
So
absolutely. And I see that quite often, and a lot of my clients who would come to me have this sort of hierarchy bias, in the sense of they think the director is going to be in the boardroom at that interview. I'm really, really, really panicked. I'm really nervous. And it's about removing that barrier that it's just a person. It's just a human being. They potentially are much better at that particular role than what you are. That's why they're in it. Or they've worked for years and years to get to that place.
Yeah.
That's why they're in it. They're just a person, and they do tend to like to be talked to like a person.
Yes, very much.
And when you're in that interview sort of scenario or situation, you always want the best person for the job.
Yeah.
Both sides of the table. Both sides of the table want that.
I'm actually looking for people that, and even within this organization, I'm looking to create a path that somebody can work towards my role. Not my job, because I'm currently in that job, but when I'm not in that job, because I have aspirations of my own, I may want to move up the ladder, but I want to put in place the steps and the stages really, really clearly, how you progress through that. And that starts at the interview. I want, when I'm bringing somebody in for, it could be a junior role in sales, it could be somebody who's a business development manager for X, or head of, whatever it is, I want them to know that there's an opportunity to progress here, if they want to, because not everybody's built that way. Some people are like, nope, I want to come, tick my box, 9 to 5, that's good. And you know what? We need people like that too. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you've got the aspiration to grow and progress, I want to show you the path and how to do that.
There was, touching on what you've just said, there's been recent research done with regards to what keeps an employee happy, satisfied, and willing to stay in an organization longer, and that is training.
Yeah.
That is being trained up and given a purpose instead of just being used as a cog in a machine.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
they feel needed, wanted.
The training is invaluable, and whether that comes from me, you, or a third party, it shows that we're investing in them as individuals and investing in their future. And again, I would love everybody within this organization to stay in this organization until the day that I leave it. However, that's not life. People will move around, but I want to be able to, that if somebody's progressed to the level and I've helped them and they get a director's job somewhere else and I've played my small part in that, well, I'm going to have equally the amount of pride that I would if they'd stayed and progressed through here. So look, the more that we can work together and that we can better everybody, and with training and the right amount of showing value in people, then everybody wins. Everybody wins.
Absolutely. But I think it starts at that interview stage, doesn't it? And getting that right person into the door to get them started. Because there are so many wrong people that come to the door and allowed in.
And I often query that, I've done a bit of work in previous organizations where we've actually had to set the criteria and look at it, and you're wondering how are people still applying for this when there's such tight criteria, written out. I'd love to be an airline pilot. I just can't rock up the EasyJet and say, "Here, I'm a nice fella, give us a go." It doesn't work that way, So I don't understand why people are applying for, financial controller roles or sales roles or whatever it might be if they don't meet the desired criteria. The essential criteria is actually.
I'll give you a bit of a factual statistic on that, okay? Men who don't have what it says on the criteria are more likely to apply for the job than a woman. So they only need to have 50% of the desirable or actual criteria before they'll apply. A woman needs to have 100%.
Without walking down a path that maybe will get me in bother, is that just because the female brain is a bit more logical thinking? They're sort of going, well, that, tick, 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 tick. And it's almost like, is it an ego thing with a man that goes, well, here, listen, I'm halfway there, I might as well give it a rattle?
I can't speak for women or all women, but I can't speak for all men, but I can tell you what the statistics mean. It means that men are driven egotistically.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So they've just went, I could do that.
I'll give it a go. Women are a little bit more hesitant. Even risk-taking, females are less of risk-takers than males are.
Right, okay. There you are.
Yeah.
You know what? I can see that, within the different industries that I've been in. Now that you've said that out loud, that makes a bit of sense. That makes a bit of sense. Because there's some lads that I'm just thinking, I don't know where you've got this confidence from, but fill your boots, lad. If only if you're as confident as you are confident, would be home in a boat.
But do you know what, though? Those type of people are found out eventually.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it's those type of people who are phenomenal at an interview.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like they have nothing to lose. Whereas you have that tentative person going in who really wants the job because they know they could do the job.
Yeah.
Or it's that next step in the ladder of their career progression, and it's a bit of a stretch, or they believe it's a bit of a stretch. Mm-hmm. But what I tend to find is that there are so many people not going for the right level of job based on their experience and based on that level of skill set that they have. And it's frustrating.
What would you say from a coach point of view? There's two sides of two schools of thought there. I think you're punching above your weight there. Maybe don't do it. Or the other side of that is you're showing, even though you know that you haven't got what the criteria meets now, you're actively showing to potentially a new employer or your current employer that you have that ambition. Would you discourage that, do you think, or would you, or is it sort of just?
It's very dependent on the situation.
Yeah.
You know, you're not going to jump into, let's say, a director's role and you've only come in as part-time. I think that always shows a bit of recklessness.
Yeah.
As opposed to, and how else would you look at that as a director? You would look at that and go, is that person ambitious, or what is going on?
Well, it's funny, this links right back to the music, and I used to say that the new bands that came into our promotion, you can't pick up a guitar and a microphone and expect to have number ones across the globe. If you started in a bank, would you expect to be the CEO the second day? And they're like, no. And I'm like, why do you think you can jump from 1 to 10 in the music industry? So it links back, I guess, across all industries, whether that's the arts or, banking.
It does, and sometimes you have to go through pretty much what you've been through yourself, is that hard slog of learning and that process of getting to where you need to be.
Yeah.
But what tends to happen is people get stuck. They only go so far and then they get stuck and then they stop because external life outside of work and career tends to take over.
Yeah.
You know, I see lots of these people on Instagram and Facebook and all the rest of the social media, and they are either single or just married or with a partner.
Yeah.
And they're telling you exactly what you should be doing based on their worldly experience of nothing.
Yeah.
And it is very strange that I've always been told that you should mirror someone who you would like to have some aspect of and become.
Yeah.
And when I looked for someone who is like me, I couldn't find them. I couldn't find that over 40, 4 children, married.
Yeah.
I couldn't find anybody like me. So what I had to
You
do was
Kevin O'Reilly, that's why, you know that, right? Thank goodness.
Thank goodness is right. But what I do now is I look at parts of people and I mirror my parts on them.
Yeah,
and that's what I tend to
wise.
find.
That is
And
wise.
I was watching that show King Richard, you know, the Serena Williams, the tennis program, and she was asked a question during the show and says, "Who would you like to be?" And she went, "Me. I want other people to be like me."
Yeah.
And that's the sort of stage that I'm now at. When I look at other people and I think, yes, I love what they do, I'm gonna use that within me. But I want other people to look at me and go, I want to be like this guy. Because there's nobody like this guy out there.
I can tell you that, listeners and viewers, that he is 100% correct. There is nobody like Kevin O'Reilly. He's one of a kind.
I hope you mean that in the nicest possible way.
No, I genuinely do. That's sort of very condescending. I genuinely do. You know, like, you've been very good to me across my career and in my life, and helped shape part of those early formative career years, and we're part of that culture and helped shape that culture. And I don't even know if you probably recognize that, but it was the small things that you were able to do for me. Put your arm around me when I needed to, kicking the backside when I had to, taking me out to play football with you and your big brother, and creating that team environment outside the working environment. I remember all those days when we used to play at the Valley and things, and it was just a bit of that community that you were able to show me. And so when you're talking about aspirations, you know, and to now, I mirror what you just said, and I aspire to be a wee bit more like you.
Oh, well,
So thank you for being able to help shape me.
Thank you very much, Ross. I really appreciate that. And I hadn't paid you, isn't that right? Haven't paid you to say that. That's just but I do recall some of those moments back in the day. And the way I always treat people is the way I always would like to be treated. And I had exactly the same thought process as what you said. And you'd said, leave it in a better way than you find it. And that's how I like to tend to treat people. I like to leave them in a better way than I find them. As a coach, that's what I get from that. I get that sense of fulfillment. You know, take money and business out of it. What I get from seeing someone succeed is huge. It's absolutely huge.
Yeah,
and I've always went by a little saying, a little by a little becomes a lot. It doesn't have to be a massive, huge change in an attitude or a big gesture. Just little and often. And that's enough for people. Because it shows, and I think it potentially, you could maybe elaborate on this a little bit more. but it shows that you see people. And the reason I say you could elaborate on this is you've worked with homeless people.
Yes.
And I remember reading about some of the problems or some of the challenges that homeless people find themselves in. And one of them had actually says that people don't see me on the street, so I don't feel seen.
Well, that, that is, if I was to tell you, if people ask me this all the time, what do you do to get, and I hate this because I'm gonna verbatim repeat what the people ask me, and see if you can pick out the bit that I hate. What do you do to give them money? Give them money. What's that mean? Why are we tarring everybody with the same brush? Do we not discuss this? Do we not talk about this? Everybody's all equal. When you say they, you mean somebody who's found himself in a homeless situation. Nobody wakes up and says, I'm going to be home. You know what I love to do? I love to be homeless today. They don't do it. It's by circumstances. It's by 100 different things, broken down marriages, addictions, whatever it may be. But nobody has chose to get and be on the street there. So my advice would be is exactly that. Meet the people, speak to the people, ask people, eyeball the eyeball. If they're sitting and you can sit with them. If they're standing and you feel comfortable, stand with them. But just acknowledge. And sometimes the guys and the girls on the street don't actually want your money. They don't. Sometimes they're there because they're trying to find their next phase. What they're actually looking for is that human interaction. They're looking for to feel humanized. They're looking for, sorry, I'm getting rid of this here. They're looking for to feel better than the situation that they find themselves in. And if you walk past a guy or girl on the street and ignore them, then you're not humanizing them at all. There's a brilliant sign in London, and it was a big, bright, yellow neon sign on the pavement that says, if this was a human being, you would have walked past them. Brilliant. Brilliant bit of marketing. Yeah. And you're right. And that's what I got most. And that was the founder of Outside In, another person that I learned from, who was a lot younger than me, is a guy called David Johnson. So he created the streetwear brand where you bought a hat and the second hat was donated to somebody on the street. The whole idea was not the hat. Obviously, the hat brought its own merits with the warmth and all, but it was a tool to open up your world and your network to the person. Because we all have the want and need to help, we just don't know how to. So again, back to my question: how do I help them? Do I give them money or whatever? People want to help. So what Outside In did was said, listen, I'm going to give you the tools to break that wall down between the two of you. You're going to give them a gift. You're going to introduce yourself. You're going to find out about more of them. And if you can help in one way, shape, or form, brilliant. If you can't, and all you've done out of that interaction is shown them that they're still loved, they're thought about, and they're still humanized, brilliant. There's no lose situation there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what spoke to me so powerfully. And David was very, very good at articulating that. And he was able to create a community of people who felt and thought that way. And we have made good changes. We are not anywhere close to the final finished product, and it's things that we should be doing more of. And real life, 9 to 5s take over, and times I'll dip off and I'll do less than I should do, and then there'll be times where I'll do more than I need to. But on the whole, it's important to remember that we're all equal. We're just in different situations.
That's it, isn't it? And it's only when potentially you're faced with that different situation do you realize that we are equal.
Yeah.
Everybody is equal. And they should be treated with that level of respect.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's what's missing. It's even missing. And you've mentioned culture a couple of times for within business. Sometimes that's one of the only elements that's missing in a whole organization is that respect for others and other people's opinions and views. But that always starts at the top. Culture starts at the top.
Yeah, I agree.
It does.
100%. 100%.
Now there is a few mavericks there that is maybe not right to that very top level, but everything below that is a good culture. Yeah. And they're bearing that weight of everything else above them.
It's as important as skills. Skills, absolutely. Culture, timings, they're all equally as important. And then leadership. If you put 4 things in a row, they all sit across that. But if you don't have culture, you have nothing. You have no purpose. You have no. Why would people come here? Why would people want to work in the ICC or the Waterfront Hall? We have a value set that is unshakable here. We have values that we work beside, and one big thing that one of the standard ones is one team. Sounds cliche, sounds a bit cheesy. I can tell you now, we are as good as any and better than most. Why are we better than most? Because we act as one team. And that goes from genuinely the production crew, the catering company, sales function, the event planners, the housekeepers, and everybody in between. And everybody, it's like that story, isn't it? It's when I can't remember who it was now, but they're walking through NASA, and the guy's mopping the floor, and somebody who's seemingly important says to him, "What are you doing?" And he said, I'm helping send a rocket to the moon."
I think it was
Right?
JFK.
Is that what it was? No,
Yeah.
I just thought that, and that's the thought here. We are here to create world-class environment for arts, entertainment, and business tourism. And everybody in this organization plays that part. And to a person, you could pull them out and they will tell you that. That's what they're here to do.
That's phenomenal. If only all businesses and organizations thought like that.
Yeah, they should.
The world would be different.
They should have the belief. There's time and place for spreadsheets, numbers, and metrics. And of course, they are big business drivers, and they are things that we're all held accountable to. But what's the purpose that's going to get you to that? What's going to help you get to those metrics and goals when the paycheck isn't?
It's the people. It's always the people. It's always the people. But it's not always the people. It's always the right people with the right attitude at the right time in the right place. There's a lot of things that need to fall into place. And again, if we pull it back to that interview process, it starts there, writing the job description correctly for the right person, not a copy and paste from a job description 6 months ago or one that's been taken off the internet, which I see more than I would like to admit. It is horrendous when people walk into an interview and they're asked a question, they go, "Hold on, that's not in the job description."
Yeah.
How can I even prepare for that?
It's not fair to the candidate.
Absolutely not.
That is absolutely unfair.
Absolutely not. But do you know what? That leads us lovely into asking the question. Ross, tell us about your worst job interview ever.
Now, is this an interview that I've sat as the candidate, or I have been recruiting for?
Do you know what? You have free reign.
I'll go for recruiting for.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll not say who or where I was because it might give it away.
Yeah.
So we were recruiting for a business development role, and we were going through, I think, maybe 13, 14 applicants. But there was one individual who came in and they sat like this. And they basically were so contorted, they didn't make eye contact. They didn't look at the person who was helping me conduct the interview process.
So they sat side on the chair and just sort of looking over their shoulder towards you. Okay.
The body language was horrific. I was sitting across the table. They were showing me basically their back like this, looking toward the door, looking at the clock as if they had somewhere else to be. No interest in being there. Couldn't ask a question. When we were presented with, give an example of, they were just going, and on paper, this person was ideal. In the room, just capitulated. And I actually said to him, "Do you want to go out for 5 and come back?" No, I'm okay. At that point, I just knew it was over, and it was almost to the point where after the process, we both knew. It's like failing your driving test. You both knew, right? Yeah. But I sort of said to him, "Look, you might need a bit of guidance here. You might." And I know this sounds like a paid campaign, but I actually gave him your number and said, "This is a friend of mine. You might want to reach out here." Okay. and I don't know if they ever did or not. And again, that's maybe one for off air, but it was it was so obvious that they hadn't prepared, or they had, well, I don't know if he hadn't prepared, or his lack of confidence made it feel like he hadn't prepared.
Okay.
And I don't know where the lack of confidence had come from, because on paper he was doing everything that he was supposed to do within his current role and seemed like a natural fit. But again, maybe it was fabrication on paper. And when the party came to Hardy and I was scrutinizing and maybe pushing some of those questions a little bit more, because in my role as sales director, to your point, I need to make sure that I've got the right people for the role. And it wasn't that there were difficult questions, or like, I wasn't asking to do mental arithmetic or anything, on the spot. It was just give me examples, and it was quite conversational. So it blew my mind how somebody could walk in a room and represent themselves in that fashion. And that one's always stuck with me. I've always thought, I hope that my sons or anybody that I've coached, mentored, or worked with would never find themselves in that situation. I would hope that they would be able to.
If you had an opportunity now to go back and speak to that person, what advice would you give them?
I would almost stop. People sit uncomfortably in the silence. So, as a sales professional, a poor salesperson won't let the silence sit. They'll try and fill it. I would actually let that settle. Just let him come back down. Let him ground himself. Let him untangle. Read the room. Take a breath. Realize it's okay. It's fine. Maybe even give him a bit of a reassuring. Look, just take a breath. Take a minute. We're going to go. And really, really let him know that I want him to be his best version of himself. It bringing me zero value for him not to give me his best here.
Yeah.
And I'd rather I'd rather give him those couple of minutes to compose himself and show me everything from the best foot forward than rattle through the next 40 minutes of waffle here and twisted body language and, seemingly not wanting to be there.
Yeah, I've had an occasion exactly like that myself, where someone had set, as I called it, side saddle on the chair, looking over their shoulder towards myself, the door, the clock, everything that they needed. They were in fight or flight. That's exactly what they were in. They were panicked. They wanted to get out of that room. They were uncomfortable. But when I sort of took them to the side and done exactly what you had offered that gentleman and had that conversation, this guy actually took that.
Good.
So he took that and went away for a couple of minutes. I took the next person in, and then this other guy came in, and he was a different guy. Speaking with him after, he thought we were trying to trip him up, giving him trick questions. And this is a really common issue with a lot of candidates. They believe that the interviewers are there to trip them up, which is not the case, because most interviewers actually don't want to be doing an interview. They want to be doing what they get paid for, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday.
Yeah,
They
we don't
actually,
have time to be doing it.
No, they don't. So they want the best candidate in the quickest time possible. And all they're asking is you to answer the questions as truthfully and as honestly and as in full as you can.
Exactly that. It's
And
exactly.
yes, that might sound easy, but for some people, that's a real difficult problem for them to solve. And they just find that talking is difficult, never mind talking about themselves.
Yeah.
Had a gentleman today actually who had said, Kevin, questions were great. I answered all the questions that they give me, but the one I got really stuck on was, tell me about yourself. And I said, this is actually a very common issue. This is genuinely, I could just make my living on that question alone.
Right,
Okay, because it seems that every person who comes to me gets stuck in that question, and it is a confidence, it's a lack of self-belief. But I always say to them, listen, you can't get this question wrong.
Yeah, it's about you.
It's about you. There's no right or wrong answer. It's about you. Now, there is a structure that we use, and there's actually a structure and a methodology that I've developed based around all of these people. It's called the T method, the TEA method. Today, earlier, and after. So it's like a 3-part answer. So you tell us why you're here today. Tell us where you currently are working, why you're applying for the job. And then you segue into where you came from.
Mhm.
That
Right.
past
Yeah.
right into the emotion of why I decided to join and go for this type of career. And then we talk about aspirations or after. Where do
Like
you want
that.
to go in the future? It's a really simple technique, really, really simple. But it's taken me potentially a few years actually to come up with that methodology based around 99.9% of the clients cannot answer their question. Tell me a
Yeah.
little bit about yourself. That question is usually a little nice icebreaker, and the interviewers think that's a really simple question because you're the expert on this,
Yeah.
but it's actually one of the hardest questions to answer, and it makes people stick for the rest of the interview.
There's a bit of tailspin almost.
It does, because they're almost thinking, they're almost beating themselves up as they're going
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah.
But it's
That's
very
I've
very
never really
difficult.
thought about that before.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe the next time when you're interviewing, maybe you'll think of, maybe I'll ask that next or the one after, or open up
Yeah.
with something else, because
That's
we,
a
we, we
good
want the
tip.
best, don't we? We want the
One
best out of
hundred
people.
exactly that. As you rightly said, I'm not here to trip you up. I'm just here to find out about you. Hopefully, you're the best candidate for the role, and how I feel you can integrate into the team.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And I love that sort of feedback and that sort of takeaway. And I hope all of our listeners are taking some of that away with them. That take a breath, just take a moment, sit in the silence, be comfortable in that silence,
Yeah.
and then put your best foot forward, show your best self. But to get to that stage, that takes a bit of preparation. It takes a bit of time to get to there, because not everybody is built like that. They just can't rock up and sit down and be their best self all of the time. There's a
Mhm.
very, very small few that can do that.
No, that's a valid point. And I understand it from going through the process recently myself, how nerve wracking it actually is.
Mm,
So I always have the empathy for the people coming through the door, and that's why I always try and greet them with a smile, friendly handshake. Come round. I try not to have the barrier of the table to be the
good.
first thing. I don't want someone to reach across a barrier to me. I want to meet you at the door, shake your hand, walk you through, sit you down, pat you on the shoulder, glass of water, and then if I happen to be sitting across the table from you, great. But my favorite thing to do is if I have somebody else with me in an interview, is split the table. So what I'll do is have the candidate across the table from potentially and somebody who's taking notes, but I'll sit at the top of the table. So the him and I are now just talking. We're now just conversing. We're in a room. Don't worry about this person. They're just there to take notes. It drops those barriers down.
It does. And I'm glad you said about that smile and meeting
Yeah.
them at that door, because again, it is that reduction of barriers that makes people feel a little more comfortable. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this, but a smile is actually contagious.
Oh yeah, if someone smiles at you, smile back, and it's
Correct.
even like, and even the answer to this question always makes me wonder why people answer in such a way. How's the form, or how are you? I'm all right. I'm all right. Well, you've just set your own metric there. When people ask me how I am, I'm brilliant. I'm wonderful. I'm fantastic. And the curiosity is like, why are you fantastic? Just having a
Yeah.
really good day. All of a sudden, it's as contagious as the smile. It's like, I
Yeah.
want to have a good day. Well, come to my team. We'll all have great days.
Ross, I'm exactly the same. Exactly the same. Anybody ask me, how are we doing today, Kevin? I'm fantastic.
Yep.
Absolutely fantastic. Because what's the alternative, Ross?
Yeah, you tell yourself it's all rubbish, and then you live in that psyche.
Yeah. You
But it's
you
not.
you go to that level.
Yeah. Whereas if you're up at that, I'm fantastic, I'm fan Dabby Dozy, whatever way you articulate yourself, as long as you're setting yourself into the, yeah, I am really good here. I am in a good place. Your whole body straightens up. You feel it, that energy comes across, and for the candidate, I would hope that resonates. To goes, I want to work for a guy like this.
Yeah.
I want to feel like this every day. This is
Yeah.
great. I want this energy. So, I mean, yeah, I'm a big believer in that, but not falsifying it. We all have bad days. We're all human. But if you live in it and you allow it to affect you and you let that pull you down, well, you're going to lose. So take the emotion out of it. Deal with the fact that, you slept in, great. You slept in. Now you're up and ready. Don't let it ruin your day. Here's what we're going to do. You
That's
know what
it.
I mean?
I absolutely agree. And I know it's even what you'd said there about having, we all have those bad days. What I strive for is to have a moment in a day
Yeah.
Just a moment,
It's only moments.
not a complete bad day, because we all have them.
Yeah.
Things don't always go to plan.
Nope.
We do plan for some things. Doesn't go to plan. So what do we do? Do we just throw the dummy out of the pram? Do we hold our hands up and go, well, I tried, I'm not doing it anymore? Or do we say, hold on a wee second, that didn't go to plan. What can we do now?
Yeah. It's exactly it.
Is that going to affect me?
How
But
to fix it.
that's your mindset, Ross.
Mhm.
That is not how all people think. But that's why you are where you are today. Because you think differently.
Mhm. Potentially so. Potentially so.
No,
I would hope so. I would,
100%.
and again, if I can help people think and feel this kind of way without, I'm obviously not as skilled in anything in this area as you would be, but I would hope that if people could see it and emulate it to a degree, and even just try it for themselves, who knows? They might just turn their fortunes around.
Ross, I think I would like to work for you.
Well, come on ahead. There's loads of seats here.
I tell you, if there was more bosses and employers like you, business would be very, very different for so many people, and there wouldn't be so many people. You might potentially put me out of a job. Actually, there might be not too many people looking to change that role.
Well, if that's the case, I'll always keep you a seat here. So, but no, listen, that's very kind of you to say. I'm just trying to leave it better than I found it, and in any way, shape, or form, from the interview right through their career, I want to let them know that we're here for them, and I think that that's important that people understand that. And for anybody who has any doubts and is listening to this and is querying, should they go for that interview or should they do that thing, check to see if it's something you're skilled to do. Don't try to be the airline pilot, but if it's in your wheelhouse, back yourself, do the research, reach out, connect in network, reach out to the likes of Kevin if you need coaching and that confidence. Do it. Just do it. What's the worst thing that can happen? Just
Exactly.
do it.
Exactly. It is, and I think that's the issue with what a lot of people tend to manifest is they manifest the worst thing that can happen.
Mhm.
And sometimes that is a little method and a technique to use so that you can feel a little more comfortable going in because that is the worst thing that could happen. But some people take that as literal. That is what is going to happen is the problem and that mindset. And that needs shifted and that needs changed. There are so many good people out there sitting in jobs, bored to death because they are so skilled, so experienced, and so qualified, but just don't have that confidence to move on to that next stage.
Yeah.
And I think frustration is the wrong word I would use, but I want the best for them.
Yeah.
I see that they can, but the only person that holds them back is themselves.
Frustration is the right word, I think, because when I've come across people like that, you can just see the potential bursting out of them. And the only thing that's holding them back, as you say, is them. It is frustrating. You almost want to give it a shake and somebody just go, if you could see what I could see, you would be 10 steps ahead of yourself now, so, but I guess that is my job. In fact, that is my job.
It is. It is. And we discussed previously about the toolbox and having different tools within that. And sometimes the shake is part of that toolbox. Sometimes the armor on the shoulder is part of the toolbox. And sometimes the size 11 in the backside is part
Yep,
of the
works as
toolbox.
effectively too. Yep.
Whatever is needed on the day in that moment, in that situation, everybody is different. And it takes a moment or two for people to really understand other people's motivations. But once you get to an understanding of what motivates people, you can help them on that journey.
Yeah.
You can help them. Yes, I know you said family and so on, and there's that driver in you, and you're not sure what it is, but it's there.
Mhm.
It's there to leave this world in a better place than you found it.
Yep.
And I think there's no other better message that I can finish this on than that.
Yeah,
Let's
great. Listen,
let's leave
thank you
this
very much.
world. Yeah,
Yeah,
let's leave this world in a better way than we found it. Ross,
100%.
thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely brilliant. No problem at all. This is an exceptional episode, and I think everybody should listen to this episode, regardless of any other episodes that they have listened to up until now or after this. This is a very important episode for everybody, not just for interviews, but for life in general. So again, thank you very much, and